All right. What's up? What's good, everybody? It's BQ and TW here with the Cool Factor, the Cool Factor podcast. Let me start off saying this. When we first started doing the Cool Factor, our focus was to do a brief review of the show, not a full review, just a brief meat and potatoes show. Last week's episode was 2 hours long, unacceptable for us and what we were trying to accomplish. You know, I think our first few episodes, we did a good job with it, and then we just rabbit trailed the shit out of that episode, and it went way longer than we wanted to. So we kind of sat down. We said, yo, we need to change up this format, and we're going to do so with this episode. So we hope you dig it. We are going to hit some main points from Impact that we liked and didn't like, and it's going to be delivered a little bit different than what you're used to from us. And then we're going to move into a new general big talking point every single week. Doesn't have to do with the episode. So for instance, this week we're going to be talking about Tessa Blanchard and why her Impact run as the world champion didn't work, or why Tessa Blanchard in general didn't work for Impact Wrestling. So we're going to talk about this last episode of Impact first. If you're listening on YouTube, if you check the description, I'm going to give you the timestamp. So if you don't want to hear about the episode and want to get right into the Tessa Blanchard stuff, you can do that. If you're listening on a streaming service, just check the show notes. Again, I'll timestamp it, and you can just fast forward to the Tessa stuff. But we're going to get into some talking points from Impact Wrestling this episode this past week. So TW, start us off with something that stood out to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Listen, my biggest takeaway from the show, I got a few, but my number one thing that I loved was the thing that's going to be what I'm considering the co-main event of Bound for Glory is going to be Deonna Purrazzo versus Kylie Ray. And this week, we got to see Kylie Ray take it up a notch. We got to see her mean side. I've been telling everybody, I've been following Kylie Ray on Twitter, and she's a very interesting follow. She looks like somebody that'll be fun to party with, fun to hang out with. And for what we actually do get to do together, we get to watch her wrestle, and she's damn good at that. And this week we got to see her show her mean side. She was upset that Susie, who was her best friend, not only got her arm broken by Deonna Purrazzo, but that Deonna Purrazzo's lackey was holding Kylie Ray, making her watch it happen. And she showed the fire that you should show when somebody does something like that to you. I'm a big fan of Kylie Ray, and I'm an even bigger fan of getting to see her mean side. BQ, what you got?
All right. So the first thing that stood out to me, and this has been something I've been talking about with people on YouTube in the comments lately, and it's Scotty Moore showing up a lot on the episode. Several people have used the term annoying with him showing up with the headphones on and everything. And, it was something I was going to bring up in the past, but I didn't because I don't want to be a nitpicker. And I am a nitpicker. That's just kind of what I do. It's, what I've built this channel off, just the little details. But Scotty Moore showed up. This is not a knock on him as a person by any means, but, with my issues I've always had with Don Callis as a commentator was I felt like he was trying to get himself over the whole time. Like you could tell that he likes drinking his own bath water. And I'm starting to get this vibe from Scotty Moore now. Like it's I don't know if it's leading towards something, bigger. And they said, hey, we got to start getting Scott on TV more. But he's involved in damn near everything. In this episode, which of course had to start off with Tommy Dreamer, Tommy Dreamer versus Brian Myers kicks off the show. And then there's the little, scuffle at the end. Brian Myers is beating him with the kendo stick. Here comes Scotty Moore. I said, is he going to come out? I said on Twitter, is he going to come out for every single match that they have now? This is not a money feud here. This is the opening show. It's Tommy Dreamer. It's Brian Myers, who we're high on. But Scotty, come on, dude. Why did you have to come out for this? And then I think it was the second match of the night. Oh, Rohit, when Rohit wrestled. Here's Scotty Moore again backstage. Granted, I get what he was doing. When he comes out, it does make sense. I'm not saying that it's just an excuse to get him out there, but it just seems like he's really into himself and he wants a lot of screen time now because he's in there trying to crack jokes and trying to be funny, and it doesn't feel like a supporting character to me anymore. And again, maybe it's going somewhere else. Now, I do got to give him props though, because the what he did with Heath not backstage, but in the break room where, you know, they were talking about a contract and everything. I thought that was all really well done. I thought Heath did a really, really excellent job actually in trying to say, hey, here's what I know that I'm worth. You know, we're getting all these like funny segments with Heath, and it was serious. And even Scott played a good role too, but then he almost played like a heel role, which everyone knows how much I hate flip-flopping. He ended up kind of playing more of a heel role when he's been a babyface every other time. So that was really, really strange to me. And then I love the way that it ended with him having the confrontation with Rhino, calling him by his shoot name in the hall after. So I gotta give props to the Heat stuff. I enjoyed that. I'm just not understanding the Scotty Moore on screen constantly stuff. Hope it's going somewhere. If it's not, let's push back a little bit on that. What do you got?
All right, so one thing that I feel like I know where it's going and I'm ready to get there is EC3 versus Moose. So EC3's been threatening to destroy the TNA title for weeks. He's had Moose chasing him all over the country for his TNA title back. And this week we got to the point where EC3 finally destroyed the TNA title. He threw it off a bridge, which was like laughable because he was standing right next to a bush, and I'm pretty sure we heard it hit the ground like as soon as he dropped it. And, you know, Josh Matthews was insisting that he threw it off a bridge. And I couldn't help but think back to when I was a kid and I saw Stone Cold throw the Intercontinental title off a bridge when he was feuding with The Rock, and just having my mind blown because I couldn't believe that had happened. like what a memorable moment this was, and this was the total opposite of that. And so with that, I said, you know what? At least that part of this story is done. Let's get to the match. Let's get to the fight. I'm excited to see the fight. But here's the thing that I'm a little nervous about. They've featured EC3 so much. They've clearly invested in EC3 so much. And this match with Moose is coming up at Bound for Glory. In my eyes, Moose has to win. But I don't know if he'll win. I don't think he'll win partially. But I'm hoping that he wins. EC3 has antagonized Moose so badly throughout this entire process. I feel like if Moose doesn't win, this is going to be as bad as Triple H beating Booker T at WrestleMania after he called him everything in the damn book leading up to that match. So, Moose, you got to come through, baby. BQ, what else you like?
I tell you what, another guy who needs to win is Rohit Raju. And I don't just mean at Bound for Glory. I mean in freaking general. He has done this Beat Rohit challenge. He's had 2 matches. He's lost them both. Everything with this has just been rushed, because I feel like when Chris Bay was the champion and Rohit obviously was trying to get it in a little bit, getting in cool with him so that he could steal the title. I liked where that was going, but it was all so fast. They could have dragged that out. But in the meantime, this whole time, Rohit just goes out there, and even when they broke him off from the Desi Hit Squad and he was the Desi Hitman, they changed the music, they changed his look. He's just losing. And then he wins the X Division Championship. And I'm like, well, finally he's going to string some wins together. And he's still losing. And you and I talked a little bit offline that, well, it would be weird for him to start just winning all of a sudden. Yeah, and that's true. That probably wouldn't be super realistic. But he's got to start doing something, getting some kind of momentum. I think his only win is versus Crazy Steve on Explosion. That's just not going to do it. I just think he needs more momentum. Now, I understand the storyline. He's kind of doing the chicken shit heel thing and leading into a multi-man match. We thought it was going to be a 4-way match. They ended up adding Willie back to it and Jordan Grace. Did I like Jordan Grace beating him? I hated it with a passion. Whoever came up with that, shoot them into outer space. Shoot them up my ass, actually, because that was awful. That I couldn't stand, but I understand you wanted to find a way to get Jordan Grace into the match. I don't know if doing, the intergender stuff after the whole Tessa thing is the smartest thing in the world, but Rohit needs some wins, and he needs a win at Bound for Glory at this point. The only way this all makes effing sense is if he actually wins at the pay-per-view, and then he can start stringing some wins together. especially because they've been hot-shotting the damn X Division title around. So he needs a win. He needs it at Bound for Glory. And it's hard to imagine Trey losing another match and TJP not getting a title, a title reign. But Rohit needs to win this shit. He really does. What you got next?
All right, so EY jumped Rich Swann while Rich Swann was basically, continuing his rehab. But last week, the doctor already told us he was cleared. So, he was pretty much good to go, right? So it seemed like that part of the story, the rehab, the coming back, are you going to be ready to fight story was told, but not so fast. EY was hiding in a daggone in hospital scrubs in the rehab facility, and he jumps Rich Swann, hits his leg with a kettlebell, ties a rope around his leg, like really bad, vicious, nasty attack. EY, you are an evil son of a bitch. And yeah, listen, I gotta say, overall, when we keep going back to the rumored leaked Bound for Glory card, which is coming to fruition, when we first heard about this card, in a vacuum, it didn't seem very good at all. But I gotta tell you, right now, between the main event, EY and Rich Swann, the EC3 and Moose match, and the what I'm calling the co-main event, Deonna Purrazzo versus Kylie Ray, that's 3 matches I am genuinely invested in the outcome, and I really want to see. And that is a credit to the storytelling that they've been doing on this show. Shout out to Impact Wrestling. The storytelling has got me. I was on the fence about whether or not I was going to buy this pay-per-view, but I got to tell you, they've earned my dollar. Bring us home.
All right, so we're talking about the main event of Bound for Glory. The guy who we thought was going to be in the main event when the card leaked was Ken Shamrock. I have said that I hate everything they've done with Ken Shamrock since he's arrived, with the exception of last year Bound for Glory with Moose, but that's because Moose carried that thing. Everything he was doing vignette-wise and stuff was solid gold. The match itself kind of stunk. Maybe it wasn't that bad, but compared to the rest of the card, it wasn't that good. But, Moose really carried that. Aside from that, I've hated everything Ken Shamrock has done. Since Ken Shamrock has returned, he would get on the microphone and talk. And granted, he's older now, but it was a voice that I didn't recognize. When he was wrestling, he wasn't a wrestler that I recognized. When they like to show when he won the NWA World Title and he's holding the bell and like that wrestler, and then the wrestler we see now, I don't see the same person. I don't see the guy with the Intercontinental reign back in the days and having the matches with Owen Hart and The Rock and all these dudes. I don't see that with him at all. So I've really not really enjoyed what he's done. But now they really threw a wrinkle in things where, him and Sami Callihan had that match with the North. I had no interest in that match because I didn't want to see them tag together. I wanted to see an established team take on the North. But then they, a week later, Sami tries to get into Ken Shamrock's ass a little bit, but Ken Shamrock's like, "You're right." And then he disappears, and then we don't see him. And then Sami Callihan turns babyface for a little bit. Well, I guess he already was, when they were taking on the North. But he had this like little bit of a babyface run, and then all of a sudden, someone attacks Eddie Edwards. Got to get him out of the title picture, obviously. Someone attacks him. It's Ken Shamrock. They tie it into the Sami Callihan feud, which I thought was genius because that was one of the best feuds that they've had in a really, really long time. They tie it in. Ken Shamrock shows up. And this past episode where Shamrock was showing some remorse, which made it realistic because you can't just be heel overnight. It was realistic, but when Ken Shamrock started yelling and he started getting crazy and kind of had that like roid rage type, like now it started connecting with him. It's like, dude, that's the Ken Shamrock I remember. And even Sami was saying that we're tapping into the old Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock is old, but he means Ken Shamrock of old. But I started finally connecting with him and say, dude, that's the guy I've seen on TV before. Not this character that we've been seeing now where they've tried to push him as a big deal and he doesn't really come off as big as one. Now I have a lot more interest in this, a lot more interest in the feud, a lot more interest in Sami Callihan again, because now he's back to what he does, where he's, doing the heel thing. And we could get something really special with him and Eddie again. Who really knows? But I just Got to give them props for what they did with this. The only negative I have about it is right after the angle where he snapped, and by the way, Sami is funny talking about 3 million likes and 3 billion retweets
he's
and all that stuff.
45 billion retweets.
Yeah, that's so they're adding a little humor to it, which is funny. It's different, but the negative I got after he had him snap on the backstage worker was that it cut to Josh Matthews talking over the fucking music again, and what's gonna happen? Bound for Glory's coming up, and I know this is like nitpicking, but TW, like, you work in television and nitpicking and this kind of stuff, these little things do matter. Like when you're watching the news and the anchor man is telling you this sad story about someone that got murdered down the street, or I could probably say something else, but I'll just keep it at murder. Yeah. They don't, like, 10 seconds later go, oh, so if you love puppies and kittens, you can adopt them down the street. So right. When you have an angle like that, fade off, go into a commercial, and then come back with Josh talking over music. But for me, it really took away from what we just saw on the screen. Again, these are little things, but that's the difference between good and bad television. You might say it's nitpicking, but again, it's the difference between good and bad television and how stuff comes across. So that does it for our Impact wrap up. We hit our topics, our meat and potato topics, and we're going to get into the main talking point of the episode, which is Tessa Blanchard, her Impact run as world champion, why it worked, what didn't work, and where it all went wrong for her. We all know how it started. She was coming in hot and never even dropped the title. It just turned into a complete shit show by the end. So that's what we're going to get into. But let's talk about the timeline of Tessa Blanchard in Impact Wrestling here. And then I'm going to give you my thoughts, and then we're going to cut to TW and see what he has to say about all this. Now, Tessa Blanchard debuts at a pay-per-view. Forgive me, I don't know what the pay-per-view was. I should have researched it before I started talking, but I completely forgot. So my bad on that one. But she shows up at the pay-per-view. She shows up in the announce booth with Josh and Don. And this was the night that Don started pissing me off because he was just an announcer until Tessa got in there and he made the comment, did I sign you? And I don't remember. Some stupid ass line like that, which let us know, like, dude's breaking kayfabe, like, you're, one of the guys running the company. And then from there, he's always flip flopping between I'm a color commentator and I'm the VP or everything. So that's a side note there, but something that bugged me. But Tessa Blanchard shows up in the booth. It's during a random, at the time, Taya Valkyrie versus Kiera Hogan match, because this is back when Kiera was a babyface. Didn't have a whole lot of steam to her. They threw the match together at the last minute. They just added it to the card. And there was no real heat behind it, nothing like that. They just give us the match. And the match is what it is. It's whatever. Tessa Blanchard shows up. She's in the booth for the majority of the match. Now, a lot of fans were like, oh, I didn't agree with that. It took away from the match. Impact didn't give a shit about that match to begin with, folks. That match was strictly thrown in there to debut Tessa Blanchard. If they felt that the match was important or they give two shits about it, then Tessa would have showed up in a different angle. But she showed up there. She's a big deal right away. Her first major feud was with Allie. They wrestled at Slammiversary. Had a pretty good match. It started off a little bit rough, but the match was pretty good. She had a little bit of a feud with Allie going on there for a while, establishing herself as a heel within the company. And I was like, okay, cool. They're not doing the Impact thing and throwing the title on her right away or throwing her in a title picture right away. They're giving her a meaningful feud. Yeah, they did give her a meaningful feud, and that it just led to her wrestling for the Knockouts Championship. It was a three-way match, Allie and Su Yung. I think she actually pinned Allie to win the title. This is back when we knew Tessa was a really big deal to Impact at this point, because they spoiled the match We didn't even see it on TV. They were already on Twitter and social media showing Tessa Blanchard calling her dad backstage, and I won, and she's crying. They're making a big deal about this. They're not.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that.
You know, we didn't even see the match on TV yet. We knew she was going to win. So they spoil the match, and she's a Knockouts champion. Has a pretty decent reign. However, the Knockouts division at the time was not as strong as it is right now. So she was above most of the women she was wrestling, if we're being honest. But had a decent run. And then she had the feud with Taya Valkyrie, which was, you know, excellent. They had multiple matches. I usually can't stand when we see the same people fight over and over and over. But, you know, because it re-debuted Taya as a babyface, and it's funny because I actually called that at the time when I was trying to predict the Slammiversary, not whatever pay-per-view they fought. I was predicting the card, and I said, I think we're going to get Taya returning as a babyface. She sure enough did. She showed up in Mexico, was talking Spanish. It all went over really, really well. They had great matches. They had the street fights. You know, for the most part, Taya got the upper hand on her, and it really established her. But, you know, that's who she ultimately loses her title to. I thought Tessa should have held on to the title a little bit longer than she did, but, you know, she had a decent run. That's where it leads to the Gail Kim stuff. And this is all still real good at this point with Tessa. She's doing really good stuff. Like she went to Robert Irvine's restaurant. She did that angle, which I thought was really good. She was still really, really hated. Gail Kim was really loved. She's the Impact Hall of Famer. She's one of the best to ever do it. And we realize we're getting a storyline that we're going to get Gail Kim out of retirement for a little bit. So that's like really exciting. They have a match. The match was really good. I mean, I freaking loved what they did. And then they passed the torch, and Tessa now becomes babyface, you know, right there in front of her eyes. Not something I saw coming. I don't know how many people saw it going there, but, you know, they wanted to give Tessa that babyface run. She obviously, you know, again, big deal to the company. And then we start moving to the feud with Sami Callihan. This is where it all kind of fell out. The wheels fell off a little bit. The actual build up to Slammiversary and the match Sami and Tessa had, where they main evented the pay-per-view and everything, like classic match, just really good build and exciting stuff. People were like, I don't know if I like this intergender stuff, whatever. Don Callis through this whole build became, you know, I was nauseous listening to him. Like, she's not just one of the best female wrestlers in the world. She's one of the best wrestlers. Did you notice I say wrestlers? Yes, you say that every week. So yes, we noticed that you said that. Anyway, she loses, and there's a moment after the match where Sami Callihan, I think, gives her bat back and everything, and an underdog story is there. An underdog story is being told, and then this is where it becomes the shit show for me. And you know, we'll get your opinions on where things kind of went wrong with her too. But it became a shit show for me because they came up with a concept on Impact Plus that I loved. I thought it was an amazing concept where they were pairing wrestlers up with their enemies, and they did a tag team tournament. And it was clear that this was done. Well, let me rewind a little bit here. The winner of the tournament, those two people were going to face each other and be the number one contender for the world title. It was clear. And I remember saying it on YouTube. I said, it is crystal effing clear. Stevie Wonder could see this through a brick wall, that it is going to be Tessa versus Sami at the end of this. And the tournament itself stunk. It was a great concept, and it stunk. It stunk in the promotion and marketing of it, to where they could have really built it up as something cool. It could have been a yearly thing, to be honest. And then we had, you know, Michael Elgin turn on his partner. I think it was Eddie Edwards, for no reason. I mean, why would you turn on your partner when you're trying to wrestle to be the number one contender? Like, you want to win. It was all really dumb, but it ends up to these two winning. It's just clear as day. When they are promoting it, they're only showing Tessa and Sami. They're not showing us any other teams, any other wrestlers, nothing. So it was just crystal clear. They have that match, though. I think it was at the Unbreakable Impact Plus show. And the match to me wasn't good. It wasn't the Slammiversary match. This match was really slow. The pace was just down. and it featured a cheap finish. So for me, it wasn't really good. Now, when she lost, did Impact Wrestling say, okay, let's let this breathe for a little bit? Let's revisit Sami versus Tessa down the road. No, 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 no. She continued to wrestle Sami Callihan and OVE every single week for 8 months after this. Now, in this 8 months, she only lost 2 times. She lost twice to Sami Callihan, but once it was after that second loss, she only lost twice in 8 months to some form of OVE. And it was the very last match they had. What was one of them? It was Sami and I think Fulton against her and Dreamer probably. And then the other one was an Impact Plus match, the one where Rich Swann got hurt. So for the most part, Tessa just winning. So the underdog story completely gone at this point. There's no underdog. This is, okay, we're pushing this girl down your throat. She is going to pin Jake Chris, the X Division champion, several times. We thought she was going to win the X Division title at Bound for Glory last year. She actually didn't win that, so that was kind of shocking. But of course, she was in the finish where Ace Austin, pushed her off at the end. But the point is, it was just shoved Tessa down our throats for over half a year. And then Sami Callihan finally gets his title shot. He wins the title. And before Brian Cage can say the word rematch, before he can even exit the damn cage, here comes Tessa Blanchard to come challenge him. And Sami flips her off. And how cool this moment actually would have been if they didn't shove Tessa versus OVE down our throats for 8 months. If they would have let this thing breathe for 8 months, and then all of a sudden Tessa's music hits because she wants to avenge those 2 losses from half a year ago, then that would have been something we could get interested in and get excited about. But because they shoved it down our throat, we knew Sami was going to win a title. We knew Tessa was probably going to take it off him. We get this bullshit title reign from Sami Callihan, and people wanted to see Sami Callihan get a good title run because he had been so good as a heel, and the stuff with Eddie Edwards, like he was carrying the damn company, and he didn't get a legit reign. I mean, he even lost his very first match. It was a tag match, but Rich Swann beat him, in a non-title affair. He didn't get a good run, and it's just like we just knew the inevitable was going to happen, and that's what happened. Tessa Blanchard takes the title off him. And for me, it just became a complete shit show because we just knew what was coming. It was telegraphed. Don Callis was a heel throughout the show, but all of a sudden when Tessa got on, for her match, he got a hard on and started, oh, Tessa, she's one of the best. It was just so clear what they were doing. And, then obviously she had all the drama, and you can get into that a little bit more. I'm sure that you will. Social media drama, but that's the timeline of Tessa from then till the very end, to where she she had that drama and didn't actually get to drop the title at Slammiversary.
Yeah, the timeline was really crazy. See, I think the build was actually good. I was on board with the build. I liked it. The not even the double turn, but the weird turn with the passing of the torch moment for Gail Kim was very interesting because Tessa she made that feud personal, like you said, going to Robert Irvine's restaurant and all that other stuff. Gail Kim coming out of retirement, they had an excellent match. And then like once the match was over, you're like, man, that was a good match. I almost can't believe Tessa won because she was the jerk here. But then once they started crying and hugging each other in the ring, I was like, oh, okay, this was a passing of the torch moment. Okay, I got it. And it was well deserved. You could not have watched that match and said it was anything but well deserved. And it was funny because WWE did a few like of those passing of the torch moments. Like they had Trish Stratus versus Charlotte Flair, and I was tweeting people. I was like, okay, watch this Tessa versus Gail Kim match and just tell me your honest opinion, which of these passing of the torch moments was better. And a lot of people was, crickets, no response. But so after that, immediately Tessa becomes babyface, and her matches she was having were so good. And she does have a charisma. And listen, I've said this before, I will say it again, man. Like, I have been in a room when some major people walk into the room, and there is a unique charisma that these certain people have. It just like sucks all of the air out of the room, and the only thing or person in that room that matters at that moment is them. I am telling you, when I was at Bound for Glory 2018 in the Melrose Ballroom, Tessa Blanchard has that. She has that. When she made her entrance, there was a feeling in that arena that there was not at any point throughout the rest of that night. Like, she is a star. Like, she has whatever it is, she has it. So I get it. I was totally on board with the push. And you were right, like with the constantly beating OVE. I mean, I wasn't somebody who was like, hey, we need more OVE wins, but you're right? Like, I mean, it was just her against OVE, and it got to be a little much, but yeah, it was kind of overkill. But that kind of brings me to my first point as to why Tessa as the world champion didn't work. And my first point is because she didn't have anybody else to make her look good. After she had spent, like you said, 8 months running through Sami and OVE, after she beat Sami to win the world title, who's she going to go against? Dave Chris for some reason, right? And like, the reason why those guys work is, for one, they're phenomenal wrestlers. Sami Callihan is hands down one of, if not, well, definitely one of the best professional wrestlers in the world. And a lot of people, when they talk about professional wrestlers, they're talking about how good is your move set. How many, can you wrestle one of these marathon Kenny Omega, matches that goes an hour, right? Like, I mean, like, no, to me, a wrestler is somebody that can make me care about the match. And Sami Callihan is the only person who got a match out of Brian Cage that I cared about as Impact World Champion, right? Because he's such a good antagonist, right? He antagonized me as a fan and Brian Cage as a character to the point where I cared about seeing Brian Cage rip Sami Callihan's head off, right? And so he did the same thing with Tessa Blanchard. And once that was gone, she was kind of exposed, because her versus a lot of these other guys, if they don't have the character presence that Sami Callihan had to antagonize you enough to really care, that you just want to see them get beat, then Tessa working with them just wasn't going to look the same. And then there's other guys, who were just too big, like a Moose, right? Like Tessa versus Moose I can't see that ever looking like a good match. It would only look like Moose overselling for somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could never see that working. So that's really a tribute to how good Sami Callihan was. So that's the first thing. That's the first reason why it fell. Because after she had the title, there was no match. There was no match for her to have. The people were like they were kind of teasing, going towards her versus Elgin. And I was like, yo, this can only be a squash. Tessa versus Elgin can only be a squash for Elgin. That's the only way this is good. This is the people won't completely roll their eyes at this match. So after she went through OVE, there was nobody else. There were no good matches for her left. And the number 2/number 1 main reason why Tessa as world champion didn't work is because Tessa's past came back to haunt her. And that's just the, most simple, plain way I can see it. You guys all know the tweet storm that happened the night before. What was the show? It wasn't Bound for Glory. It was Hard to Kill, right? That was Hard to Kill. Man, that was appropriate, right? Because like, it was damn. She sure, they sure tried to kill her. And the thing about that everyone will harp on with that was like the allegations of racism or whatever. And to me, as a black person, like, that wasn't even the worst part about it. To me, the worst part about it all was not just whether or not she might have said some things. Because listen, if you've ever been in a fight, you've probably said some things that you aren't proud of, right? You know what I mean? Like, and so to me, there was a very simple, explanation for what goes on there, but they didn't do that. I think Tessa could have done that. She could have said, hey, look, I was in the ring with this girl, things got out of hand and I said some things I'm not proud of. I openly apologize, whatever, yada, yada, yada. Even Impact Wrestling could have came out and been like, hey, we don't condone these actions, but, Tessa's been a model, a model performer for us. They didn't do any of that. They just took the ignore the noise route. And I was like, yo, this is wrong. This is dead wrong, because people aren't going to forget this. This isn't going to go away. And most importantly, why that whole thing killed her, right, is because you had person after person, wrestler after wrestler, corroborating the stories of what she was blamed to have been done, and telling their own stories of the type of person she is, the type of professional that she is. Like, again, her whole past just came back to haunt her in what was the biggest moment, the eve of the biggest moment of her career. And what happened after all this content was out there was nobody was going to touch her. Nobody was going to write a glowing article about the first woman world champion in wrestling history, when if at that time you Google Tessa Blanchard's name and the first thing that comes up is racism, or what was it, like she took a dump on the phone for some guy. So,
I don't remember that.
There was so much crazy stuff out there about her. It was so wild. And regardless of whether certain parts of it were true or not, the fact is, what you didn't hear one person come out and say, that's not her. That's not
right.
like her. You didn't hear one person say that. And so that tells you all you need to know, right? And again, this is not to, I'm not putting Tessa Blanchard on trial here, right? That's not what the purpose of this is. But the main point is, like I said, after all that bad press was out there, you weren't going to get Sports Illustrated or ESPN or The Ringer or anybody else, all who, by the way, did stories on her in the weeks leading up to this big show, right? The Ringer had an excellent article about her, talking about her family and her history growing up and her contract status and all this other stuff. There were great articles on her leading up to the show. And then after she won, nobody was going to cover it. No, because nobody wanted to be, glorifying this person who the next thing is, racism and all this other stuff, right? So, Tessa Blanchard's past came back to haunt her. What Impact Wrestling should have done in that moment, they should have looked at what was out there and they should have called an audible. They should have said, Tessa, the whole reason we're doing this is to draw eyeballs to this product in a positive way. With all this stuff out there, we're not going to draw eyeballs to this product in a positive way. Let's take a break on this. Sami should win, and let's come back to this in a couple of months after we rehab your image. They didn't do that. They stuck with it, and it didn't work. Plain and simple. It didn't work.
And then here we are. She never dropped the title. She, we didn't get that match against Michael Elgin. We didn't get something meaningful against Eddie Edwards. We didn't get that 3-way. We didn't get the 4-way, 5-way, whatever it was. And it would have been nice to actually see Tessa drop the title. But in the end, a female held the men's title and never lost it. And let
me also say this about her dropping the title. And I said this, when we first started talking about this. I thought she owed them to come in and drop the title no matter what, because she's going to carry that with her for the rest of her career, the first female world champion in wrestling history. She's going to use that to promote herself for the rest of her career. And Impact did that for her. They decided to let her be the person who made that history. And so I thought that the least she could have done was show up and drop the title. I thought she could have, listen, business is business. And look, people get paid for their work. So it is what it is. But like I said, they did something for her that elevates her in the history of the profession. And so I thought that just, again, like as a professional, right? Like the noble thing to do would have been to show up and drop the title. To me, and honestly, all that does is reinforce all the stuff we were just talking about.
Right. It does. And you really make a good point about all that stuff, that not one person stepped forward and be like, yo, this is the kind of girl that Tessa Blanchard is. I mean, you had too many people stepping forward. Like at some point, it's kind of like the Alberto El Patron stuff coming out right now. He's facing life in prison. At some point, you can charm your way out of stuff, but it continues to snowball. All signs point to, what we assume. And it just kind of seems like that with her. We already knew there was a history of being difficult to work with. And, for the most part, I enjoyed Tessa's role with the company as far as, I love that she was a part of Impact. She was a big star. You made a point. I mean, she comes out there. It just felt like a completely different person was out there. I mean, complete different level of star, I should say. She was the biggest star in the company. It was in their best interest to hold on to her. But it just seems like they have this history of just putting titles on people who are not ultimately happy.
Lakers just threw the ball away with 2 seconds to go, down by 1. Oh, this was the clinching game.
I've been paying attention here too.
They wore the Mamba jerseys tonight. They were supposed to get it done.
Yeah, I know, huh? Damn. It was a good fantasy sports night for me, though. I bet money every night on sports, and this was a good night for me. So
you bring up Tessa Blanchard, this is what happens.
But yeah, it would have been nice to see how she dropped the title, because when she won the title, it was like, well, how are they going to book her from here on? That was the big question. And to Impact's credit, they put her in tag team matches. She even lost. She actually got pinned by the North one time in one of those tag team matches. She teamed up with Eddie Edwards. She didn't wrestle as much. So it was working for me. It was actually kind of working. When I say working, I'm not saying, I would have put the title on her. I just mean compared to what I thought her reign was going to look like. I thought she was going to be running through all these dudes. And then it's like, so it's almost like they got thrown. What's the terminology I'm looking for? Because they got thrown a bone, in the way they had to drop it. And since then they've been trying to make the world title mean something again. So they had Eddie do the open challenge, which I thought stunk. We thought we were going to get a good title reign from Eddie, and they just went back to, someone just came back from WWE. Let's throw the title on him ASAP. Now, Eric Young is looking pretty damn good as the champion. Don't get me wrong. I love all the backstage shit he's doing, but there's some damage control now being done with the world title. And for the most part, I think people forgot about Tessa Blanchard. They're not still holding, it's not like every time Vince Russo tweets and someone's like, you put Viagra on a pole,
right.
they're not doing that to Impact. They're not, writing them. So, Tessa, you put the title on a girl. Some trolls still do, say something here or there, but
right.
It's an experiment that they tried for some buzz, and it just didn't work. I think there's other ways that the company should try to look for buzz instead of. I shouldn't even say try. The most natural buzz comes from just putting out a good product, and then something will click. When you're like, okay, we're gonna do this big publicity stunt, or we're gonna try to get buzz. I know that as a content creator, like you can't create viral content just because today's my day to do a viral video. It's something is just going to hit.
Right.
And I think Impact sometimes tries to force it. That was something that was forced. And, going back to what I said, if they would have let her breathe a little bit, and maybe not had her so much in the spotlight to where, all these girls, they stepped forward because they knew she was going to win the championship. They knew she was this big deal. And I don't know. Now, Daga's status with the company seems to be a little bit up in air. But I looked into it. I actually hit someone up, and they said to their knowledge he was still working with the company. They just had no storylines for him.
Yeah,
because of what happened. So I don't know. You got any closing thoughts on the whole Tessa thing?
Yeah, listen, I think Tessa Blanchard is a great talent. I think that's undeniable, no pun intended. She really is a great talent. She's been rumored to be on the way to WWE for a long time now, And I think it's fun. It's funny. It's like, it's one of those things where I think she'll do well in WWE. Well, to an extent. When I first thought of Tessa, the idea of her going to WWE, I still, I wasn't fully, I didn't know about her past so much. I had heard some things. I have some friends who work with some independent promotions that are, on like that do like, women's matches and stuff like that. And so she has a reputation, and the things I had heard were a lot of what ended up coming out. And so before I really learned about all this stuff on a large scale, or hearing it from so many people rather, I was really rooting for her. And so the idea of her going to WWE, I didn't like it because I was like, oh, she's just going to get fed to Charlotte and yada, 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 yada. But at this point, I'm like, you know what? Like, shitty people deserve each other. You know what I mean? Like, go to WWE, they'll, treat you like crap, make you get some implants and, like, and toss you away. You know what I mean? So, it is what it is. It is what it is. But I'm sure she'll be paid well. And like I said, she's a great talent. I think that whatever she does in the future, would be fine. But I think that, I think her build was good. And I think the reason why she worked with OVE so much is because, like I said, it became obvious after she got the title that there really wasn't anybody else for her to work with. She had a good match with Ace Austin, which was more for Ace Austin, right? Because we just hadn't seen him at world championship level. But again, like the pool of people she was able to work with was very limited. And so, I thought it ran its course. Like I said, I thought that the smart thing to do for them would have been to call an audible on that night and just make the people wait a little longer. And I thought you would have had a chance to come back to it. But, look, like Vince said, Brett screwed Brett, right? Tessa screwed Tessa, right? Like I don't blame Allison Kay. I don't blame any of the people who tweeted stuff about her, because if you remember, that whole tweet storm got started because Tessa put out some snarky tweet about women should support each other, right? And I go back to saying, this was after that Bash at the Brewery show where Taya and Jordan Grace had that match that I loved. And I didn't see Tessa tweet nothing about that match. And then she come out tweeting about women should support each other. And then they jumped on her because they were like, bitch, how dare you? The nerve of you of all people. And so, it is what it is, man. Like, what's done in the dark will come to the light, and so she has nobody to blame for this but herself. She has nobody to blame for this but herself. And Impact has nobody to blame for this but themselves. You know what I mean? Like you bring in the snake, you rehab the snake, and when the snake gets healthy, the snake bites you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, I mean, it was what it was. But for all you guys out there listening, if you guys have your thoughts and opinions on why Tessa didn't work, like, go ahead and, tweet them to us. You tweet me at TW Talk About on Twitter or at Talk About Pod. Tweet BQ.
BQ Speaks, definitely hit me up. I haven't been spending as much time on Twitter lately. I need to be a little bit better about it, but definitely hit me up on BQ Squeak.
Drop the comments in the bottom below this show.
Absolutely. I was totally gonna say BQ Squeaks. That's not a good look. BQ Speaks on Instagram as well. Definitely hit me up. So and speaking of Twitter, when Tessa did respond to allegations, I mean, her responses were bullshit. She just gave bullshit responses instead of just coming out, and people would appreciate a little bit of honesty, but that wasn't the case. So definitely let us know what you think about Tessa Blanchard's title run and just her run in general in the company, and make sure to respond in the YouTube comments, and if you hit us up on social media. So thanks for swinging by. We don't know what the topic's going to be for next week yet, but I hope you dug the concept of the show. Really hammered those points that stood out to the show, and they just talked about something we think you guys really want to hear about. So I don't know. I'm going to put it out there right now. I think next week we should talk about the Grand Championship.
All right, let's do it. Championship.
We'll do that. So Grand Championship it is. That'll be our why that didn't work. And that should be a fun one. That was a time I really enjoyed with Impact in general, just the time frame. So I'll enjoy talking about it. But for TW, I'm BQ. Thanks for checking us out again, and we will talk to you guys next time. Peace.